During the release of the Nintendo 64 and Super Mario 64, many games tried to capture the charm that Super Mario 64 brought to the table, and some succeeded, while others were barely noticed to the public. Glover was a humble game that introduced us with a very unique protagonist and interesting mechanics. This game was so liked that even spawned a PlayStation port, and more planned. Glover had a certain kind of charm that enticed most people who gave it a shot, and its planned sequel was to add to the game's already fun mechanics. And so in today's video, we'll be discussing Glover 2 for the Nintendo 64. Now if you were like me as a kid, you probably saw Glover on the store shelves but passed it up for other favorable titles. But the fact remains that Glover was met with decent reviews. It was praised for its good graphics, awesome soundtrack, and unique mechanics. It brought a one-of-a-kindness to the Nintendo 64. When the game was ported to the PlayStation, it was met with terrible reviews, mainly because it was inferior to its Nintendo 64 counterpart. Now Glover was a 3D platformer game developed by Interactive Studios Ltd. And released for the Nintendo 64 and PlayStation later on in 1998. Now a sequel was announced for the Nintendo 64, PlayStation, and Sega Dreamcast with a launch originally slated for mid-1999, but it was later cancelled. Glover was unique in that it used a secondary mechanic, his ball, to make Glover have different attributes. Everything from shooting, pushing, bouncing, etc. He pretty much relied on it. Now Hasbro, who in turn owned Interactive Studios, decided to take advantage of the dot-com bubble and went on a crazy spending spree, purchasing several different development companies such as Avalon Hill and Microprose, and it quickly became one of the largest video game developers during 1998. Third largest to be exact. They also purchased most of the remaining IPs from Atari and engaged in other licensing such as Frogger from Konami. But in 1999, when the dot-com bubble bursted, they posted a huge loss of $74 million. Now due to this, they decided to cut a few losses and shut down several studios. Now unfortunately for us, Glover 2 was one of the games that was cut due to this bubble burst. The game was never picked up or finished, but in 2010, NES World was able to recover a prototype cartridge of Glover 2. Now while the game isn't complete 100%, it is very much playable. Now unfortunately for us, the game has no title screen upon turning it on. It takes place right after Glover 1. It immediately takes you to a satisfying tutorial stage to teach newcomers its unique controls. Cross-Stitch was to be the game's antagonist, and even though it's outdated for today's standards, the game actually looked fantastic for its time. Now even though the game isn't complete, it has some very interesting boss battles that are somewhat complete, with very unique mechanics. Now due to the early stages of development, the game has no soundtrack, which makes it a bit hard to play. Now Glover 2 was really only advertised once in this IGN ad. The game definitely had potential and would have easily been a hidden gem had it been released. In addition, on February 25th, 2015, James Steele, a former programmer of Interactive Studios, released a blog entry detailing the unusual circumstances which led to the cancellation of the game. According to the developer, a huge misstep at Hasbro involving one worker severely overestimating the amount of cartridge required to the game blemished the Glover name at the company, and that ultimately resulted in the discontinuation of the sequel. Now I'm sure that with a combination of the dot-com bubble burst is what led them to scrapping the project altogether. Now all in all, I think Glover 2 could have been a great game to have been added to the Nintendo 64 console. Fortunately for us, you can play it on an emulator if you want to and have a closer look yourself. And that is what we know of Glover 2. Thank you guys for watching. Check out some of our other videos if you'd like. And don't forget to follow us on Twitter and give us any suggestions for any future videos. Check out our sponsors GG Labs as well, the links will be in the description below. And I'll catch you all next time.